Okay, so welcome to another deep dive. Today we are going to
Yeah.
be looking at this really fascinating transcript
Where is this
from the
fiction?
LEP Learn English Podcast YouTube channel.
Yes.
And as always, we're going to be
Oh.
taking this source material
Yeah.
and kind of pulling out the really crucial
Yeah.
insights
The insight.
so that you, our listeners, can
Yeah.
get well informed quickly.
Exactly.
Today we're going to be diving into a
Right.
conversation between Holland,
Yeah.
who is a businessman,
He is.
and Jimmy, who runs a bakery.
Right.
And the really interesting thing
Yeah.
about this conversation is
Yeah.
Holland seems successful,
Yeah, he does.
from the outside looking in,
Mm-hmm.
but he seems a little empty.
A little bit. Yeah.
And Jimmy, on the other hand,
Yeah.
actually expresses like a real joy
Yeah.
in his everyday life.
Yeah.
So our mission today is to
Well-
really understand their different viewpoints
Totally.
on success and how these mindsets
Yeah.
actually impact their well-being.
Yeah.
And, the transcript kicks off with this question
That does.
that I think will really resonate with our
Yeah.
listeners.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever felt like
Yeah.
no matter how much you achieve,
Yeah.
it's just never quite enough?
Oh, that's a powerful question.
It is.
It is. I mean, I think it really does cut to the core of this, this common human experience.
Mm-hmm.
You're always kind of chasing something,
Right.
always wanting more, never really arriving.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think it's really interesting.
Mhm.
Just look at the very beginning of the conversation
Yeah.
with Holland and Jimmy,
Okay.
because right away
Mm-hmm.
you see this stark contrast
Yeah.
in their fundamental approach to life.
Right.
Holland,
Yeah.
despite
Mhm.
all of his outward success,
Yeah.
immediately he's talking about needing more,
Yeah. Money.
bigger business.
More money, bigger business.
Greater achievements?
Greater achievement.
As if that's going to unlock happiness.
Yeah, as if that's the magic bullet,
Right. Like that's the
Like if I just get that thing,
key.
then,
Yeah.
I'm going to be happy.
It's like the key to the kingdom.
Right.
And then you have Jimmy.
Yeah, and Jimmy just seems
Totally opposite.
so content. He's
Yeah.
like,
Mm.
my business is doing well, but I really enjoy
Yeah.
what I'm doing.
Yeah, he's like enjoying his
Yeah.
here and now.
I'm finding satisfaction in the process,
Yeah.
and I don't need all this extra stuff
Yeah,
to be
it's like
have
that.
different approach.
It's really different,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
One person's like chasing,
Right.
this ever-shifting
Right.
goalpost,
Yeah.
and the other person's like
Content with,
happy with where they are.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, Jimmy
Yeah.
actually kind of labels his,
Way of thinking
yeah,
as this abundant mindset.
an abundant mindset.
Which is
yeah.
really interesting.
And so what is that? What does that actually mean?
Right. What does that mean?
Well, he's basically saying, that opportunities,
Mm-hmm.
success, happiness itself aren't
Yeah.
in short supply.
Okay.
They're limitless.
Limitless. Okay.
So it's not like,
Sure.
a pie
Yeah.
where if someone takes a piece, there's less for you.
Right.
It's more like we
Yeah.
can all have as much as we need.
And I think the really important thing here is
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
it takes the pressure off
It does.
of needing to grab and accumulate.
Yeah, to feel like, you're
Yeah, just
worth something.
feel secure or fulfilled.
Yeah, secure or fulfilled. Yet I can imagine some people listening to this and thinking, well, that sounds a little naive.
Yeah,
Especially-
particularly
Someone
K's world.
who feels that pressure
Mhm.
of competition,
Yeah,
where it's just like,
Holland even asks him that.
yeah, he does.
He says, "But if you don't keep pushing
Yeah.
for more, won't you just fall behind?"
Yeah.
And it's a fair question.
Yeah, it's a valid concern.
Yeah,
It's a valid concern.
especially in
the world that we
world
live in
that
now.
is so competitive.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Um,
But Jimmy, he tackles this head on.
he does.
He's like, look,
yeah.
it's not about
Yeah.
being passive
Right.
or abandoning your goals.
Right,
It's
yeah.
just that, your happiness and your success
Yeah.
aren't dependent on taking something from someone else.
So it's not like a zero-sum game.
It's not a zero-sum game.
Yeah.
It's not,
Yeah.
one winner, one loser.
And you know what I like about the way he explains this? Is, yeah.
It's not this sort of like,
Yeah.
esoteric
Yeah.
concept.
Yeah.
He uses like a really down-to-earth
Yeah.
analogy.
It's like baking.
Yeah, it's like baking a cake.
Yeah.
Like just because one person bakes a cake
Right.
doesn't mean,
It doesn't mean someone else can't.
someone else can't also
Bake a cake.
bake a cake.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, so we've talked about Jimmy's perspective,
Mm-hmm.
but let's go back to Holland's perspective.
Okay. Yeah.
Because Jimmy actually identifies
It does.
What Holland's dealing with
Yeah.
is scarcity mindset,
Right.
which is fascinating.
And you can even see it
Yeah.
before it's even labeled.
Yeah, you can see it.
Like just the way he's talking.
Before he
Yeah.
explicitly says.
How he feels so dissatisfied, even though he's, objectively successful.
Yeah, he's got everything that people think.
He has all the things that people think would make you happy.
Will make you happy.
Right.
He's got,
The money.
the money,
Yeah.
the achievements,
The success.
the success, the business.
Yeah.
But he's still
But he's still miserable.
not happy.
Right.
And he says this thing
Yeah.
that really kind of jumped out at me.
Yeah.
He's like, if I don't keep pushing,
Yeah.
someone else is going to take what's mine.
Yeah, like someone's going to come and take it.
Yeah, and that really highlights like a central characteristic of this.
Yeah,
It really shows that,
scarcity mindset.
underlying fear of loss.
Yeah, the fear of loss.
Yeah, that's a big part of it.
Right.
And so what does Jimmy say about that?
Yeah.
How does he describe it?
He actually describes it as this pervasive feeling that there's never enough,
Not enough.
Not enough.
Money. And Holland's own words really illustrate this.
He's constantly,
He talks about reaching his goals.
reaching these goals.
And then immediately he has
Yeah.
to set new higher ones.
And then he's just like, okay, well, now I need to get to this next goal.
Like he's on a treadmill
It's a treadmill.
that never stops.
That never stops.
He's constantly striving.
You're striving, but you're never getting anywhere.
Yeah, and never arriving at a place of satisfaction.
Right. Like you said earlier, it's that sense of like you're always trying to catch up,
Yes.
but you can never quite get there.
It's exhausting.
It is exhausting.
Yeah.
I mean, just listening to him describe it makes me feel tired.
Yeah, and that's the thing.
Yeah.
Is it's not just like,
Oh,
it's a mindset.
not just an idea. It actually
It's
impacts your energy.
In a physical manifestation as you feel.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Jimmy points out some really specific.
Jimmy goes on to like these indicators of this scarcity thinking.
Yeah.
And I thought this was really interesting.
Me too. Yeah.
Because he points out things that I think we've all.
Yeah, I think most people listening to this will have felt.
He talks about this
At some point in their lives.
consistent worry.
Yeah, so it's like a
About losing what you have.
worry about losing what you have, even
It's
what you have.
jealousy when someone else achieves something.
Yeah, and then that like
Like
jealousy when you see someone else achieve something.
you see it
I could see it.
and you just feel
Which is so interesting because you would think that if you were in a
they're
good place,
being happy for them.
you'd be happy for other people.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. But when you're in that scarcity mindset,
And then that tendency to focus on lacking.
you're just so focused on what you don't have that you can't see, the good in other people's lives.
What you do have.
Yeah.
And it just.
And that's so common, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That tendency to focus on what's missing instead of what you have.
Like, I'm exhausted.
Exactly.
Like,
And then, of course, you get into this trap of
I'm
comparison,
putting away other people.
which is like, the worst thing you can do.
Right. So,
Yeah.
I mean, we've talked
So
about.
where do you go from there?
Yeah, like, what do we do?
Yeah. If
We identified the problem.
you find yourself in that place,
Right.
what can you actually do?
Right. And that's what's so great is that
Totally.
Jimmy doesn't stop there.
Is like
Describe the problem.
I'm going to give you
Yeah.
some actual practical advice.
I've got solutions.
Yeah.
And that's the
Actionable steps.
thing I like about this podcast or this YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Is that they're not just like,
They give you real stuff you can do.
armchair philosophers.
It's not just theory.
They're like, let's give you something
practical.
you can do.
Yeah.
So what are some of the benefits?
Okay, so some of the benefits that he talks about are you start to see possibilities where you used to see dead ends.
Okay.
So instead of focusing on the problems, you're focused on solutions.
So you're not getting bogged down in the problems.
You're looking for ways.
Move forward.
Okay, and then
And you can actually start to build genuine connections with other people.
Okay.
Instead of seeing every interaction as a competition.
Oh, that's huge.
Right. Because if you're in that scarcity mindset, it's like every interaction is like, am I going to win or are they going to win?
It's like, I got to beat them.
Yeah. It's very adversarial. Yeah. And when you're in that abundance mindset, you can actually cooperate and collaborate.
And make each other better.
Exactly.
I love the example.
Yeah. Tell me about it.
That Jimmy uses.
Okay. So.
With his bakery. Because it's like.
So real world.
He's like, initially I felt that fear of competition. I was like, oh, there's another bakery open.
And you take all my customers.
What are they going to do to me?
Yeah.
But then he realized that wasn't the right approach.
And instead of trying to...
And so what did he do?
Like squash the company.
Decided to actually build relationships.
Build relationships with his competition.
Yeah, and so what happened?
The result was crazy.
Well, they started sharing tips.
They shared tips.
Yeah. They would help each other out.
Helped each other out.
Yeah.
When things were busy.
Yeah.
And
like if one bakery was slammed,
everyone thrived.
They'd send customers to another bakery.
Which you think from a purely competitive mindset.
You'd think, oh, that's crazy.
Would be the wrong move.
You know, you should be trying to like sabotage them.
Like, I don't want them to succeed.
Not help them.
Yeah.
But what he found was that when you cooperate,
working together,
everybody benefits.
Everybody did better.
Yeah.
So,
and that's a great example, right?
I love that.
Because it's like a real world, tangible example.
It's not just like
of how this
abundance
mindset can actually work.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
so then what does he say?
Beyond that,
what are the practical steps?
Jimmy gives some like really concrete, actionable advice.
He does.
For how we can nurture an abundant mindset in our own lives.
Yeah. What's the first one? What does he say?
What I like about these pieces of advice is that they're all really simple.
They're simple and easy to implement.
And they're things we can...
You don't have to like, go on a retreat or anything.
Yeah, it's not like,
you can literally do
climb a mountain today?
Yeah.
No,
So what's the first thing?
So the first thing he says is practice gratitude.
Okay, yeah. That's a classic one.
Yeah.
So how do you do that?
And it's so simple.
Yeah.
Make a conscious effort to write down 3 things
you're grateful for.
That you're grateful for.
Every day.
Okay.
Even if they're small things. Even if they seem small.
Yeah.
And I think it's...
Because the thing is...
It's powerful.
When you focus on those small things... It actually shifts your perspective.
To shift your focus to what you have instead of what you lack.
Yeah. So even if it's just like...
Maybe we should all try that after we finish here.
I had a really great cup of coffee this morning.
Just write down.
I saw a beautiful bird.
A thing that you're grateful for.
Like, just little things like that can really make a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. The second, what's number 2? What does he say?
Practical step is sharing with others.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good one.
And this...
So how do you share?
Could be anything.
What kind of thing?
It could be helping out a friend.
Did you do?
It could be offering mentorship to someone.
Oh, by volunteering.
Yeah,
donating to a charity.
Yeah. Yeah, all those things.
And I thought it was interesting.
And why? Why does he suggest that?
Jimmy's reasoning here.
Yeah.
He's like, the act of giving...
Because he says when you give...
It makes you feel rich.
Of internal wealth. Yeah. So you're not...
It shifts your...
Coming from a place of scarcity.
Yeah.
Right? You're coming from a place of...
Like, I don't have enough to...
I have plenty to give.
Yeah. I can share this.
A really powerful shift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so what about number 3? What's the third thing?
The step that I think is really hard for a lot of people.
Yeah. Especially for certain types of people.
Yeah.
Who's it hard for?
Especially, I think, for our listeners.
Well, he says, so this can be really hard for perfectionists.
High achievers.
Yeah.
Yeah, people who are really driven.
The word driven.
Yeah. So what's the thing that's hard for them?
Consciously stopping the habit.
The habit of what?
Of comparison.
Comparison.
Which is so hard.
Yeah. Comparison is the thief of joy.
It is.
Yeah.
And Jimmy even acknowledges how hard this is.
He acknowledges how hard it is.
He's like, it's really tough.
He's like, it's hard, but
But the key here is understanding that each person's journey is unique.
That everybody's journey is different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that you should really be focusing
on your own personal growth.
Your own personal growth.
Is so much more productive than not on what other people are doing.
Constantly measuring yourself against someone else's.
Because you're never gonna win that game.
Yeah.
You're always gonna find somebody
win that game.
Who's doing better than you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the next?
So what about number 4?
Piece of advice.
Yeah.
He said, learn to let go of fear.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one. Because remember, Holland's big worry.
Right back to that point.
Holland made.
About losing what he
had.
Yeah.
And
so how do you do that?
Jimmy.
How do you let go of that fear?
Suggests incorporating.
Well, he says you can try things like...
Mindfulness meditation.
Mindfulness meditation.
Breathing exercises.
deep breathing.
Even journaling.
Or even just writing down your thoughts.
Just to process those anxieties.
Just get it out of your head.
Get it out of your head and want to create that mental space.
And why? Why is that important? What does that do for you?
New opportunities.
Well, he says it creates space.
Yeah, for new opportunities to emerge.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then he talks about something that I think we all feel.
He tackles this feeling of envy.
Envy, yeah. Like when we see
someone
else succeed and instead being happy for them.
Instead of feeling happy for them?
Yeah, we feel jealous.
We feel resentful.
Yeah, we feel like, oh, why is it them and not me? So what does he say to do about that?
How reframes this.
What he says, instead of feeling
diminished by it, try to see it as evidence that what's possible for them,
that it's possible for you,
is also possible for you.
Yeah.
So it's like this limited pie.
That narrative. Yeah. Where if they get
from like a limited pie to
it's
like an unlimited universe.
It's like an endless pie.
One person's success can actually inspire others.
Yeah. And then I thought this was a great...
So what's the actual practical thing he says you can do?
Tip?
Yeah.
He's like, make a deliberate effort.
Make an effort.
To congratulate others.
To congratulate people.
When they achieve something.
Yeah.
Like, send a message.
Send a message.
Leave a comment.
Leave a comment.
You know, just acknowledge it.
Whatever it is.
Yeah, just be like, hey.
That's awesome.
Congratulate them.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting.
What does he say about that?
He says, just notice.